Hello, 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 everyone. How is everybody? Everybody. This is the live show for what? November 24th, 2021. I have a spectacular show lined up for all of you, of course. That's the same every week. I try to do my best. I try to bring some interesting topics to all of you. Things concerning, of course, what's going on with me personally, although not too personal. And things going on with the program. I preview this Friday's episode. And then probably the part that I get most excited about is getting questions from all of you. And I have some good ones tonight. How many? I think I have 4 questions tonight from Charlotte, Christy, Jill, and Jennifer. I will sprinkle those questions in as the minutes pass. So it's been a little chilly here in Clearwater Beach, Florida. I know that's funny. I don't even know. Did it reach 70 degrees today? I think it did, but maybe just 71, 72. But I think we got down to like 49 degrees last night. And I was just out there on the elevator landing looking east. It's a beautiful, beautiful night out there, but it is a little chilly. I was out there in my bare feet, and it's not very windy, but it is chilly. So, but it is beautiful out there. So, yes, I have this great outline of a show. If you ever see me, if you're new to the live show that I've been doing for over 4 years now, I do not do this all off the top of my head. I bring an outline that I put together. It usually takes me about an hour to put it together just to see what I want to talk about. And that is on my other computer, which is my new HP computer off to my left, your right. And then the computer that I use, the camera, this camera right there, is my MacBook, which is actually the same computer I use to put all of the episodes together, where I do where the files go, where I do my side of the recording, where everything gets mixed using a program called GarageBand, which I love. I've been using that for a long time. And so that's how the shows get put together. The episodes get put together. And I've already seen Screaming post this, but I'm going to say it right now. If you're watching this, if you're watching it live right here on November 24th of 2021, or if you are watching this 100 years from now, give this video a thumbs up if you could. If you could. Thanks. So let's see who's in there, and then we will get to, where I always like to start with the personal stuff first. Hello, Delane. Delane says she's prepping for tomorrow. Yes, happy Thanksgiving to everybody, by the way. And she says she will be listening in. Well, Delane, you just keep cooking, putting together whatever you're making. Of course, I would love to know what you're prepping tonight, Delane. I think everybody would like to know what kind of food do they serve at Delane's Thanksgiving. Hello, Charlotte. Thank you for the heads up earlier, Charlotte. Deeply appreciated. Hello, Screaming, Karen, LaFord, Laura, Little Bit. LaFord says she will be mostly listening too. And Jasmine, CR, Sharon. Hello, Cherie. Thank you for moderating tonight, Cherie. Good to see you. And Suzanne, Ashley. Hello, Ashley. Maybe you're new here from Spring Hill. Would that be Spring Hill, Florida, in Hillsborough County, right across the bay from me, Ashley? Is that where you are, Spring Hill? I know that area very well. Or no, where's Spring Hill? Let me think about that. No, that's north of me, right, Ashley? If I'm thinking about the same place. And a good friend of mine lives there. Hello, Jill. Of course, Kathy is here. Hello, Kathy. And Tim, I got your email about joining the newsletter. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Gobble, gobble to you. And so we got 57 there in South Mississippi. Yes. CR says, thankfully, my husband cooks and I stay out of the way. You know, CR, I'm really good at staying out of the way too. Got it. Yeah, somebody has to stay out of the way. We can't have too many cooks in the soup, right? Somebody has to be the boss. And so tomorrow I will be going over to my brother's and his wife will be doing the cooking, and I'm more than happy to stay out of the way. All right, thank you. Yeah, actually, Pasco County, right, Ashley? Thank you for, yes, my good friend Dana lives up there in Spring Hill. So, Ashley, that's interesting. Another Floridian. Suzanne, turkey ham, sweet potatoes, green beans, and Hawaiian rolls. Love those Hawaiian rolls, Suzanne. All right, everybody's listing what they're going to be having. Okay, I love that. Everybody just keep listing food. So by the time we're done with this, we'll all be hungry. Dressing gravy, deviled eggs. Love deviled eggs. Collard greens, so good. Field peas, turkey ham, and son-in-law on desserts and corn pudding. Not much of a pudding guy, but if it's just your standard pumpkin pie, that's good enough for me. All right. Yes, some of you have already said nice shirt. Well, let's talk about that first. You're saying that doesn't look like an Unfound shirt. You're right. This is a shirt that last week's guest, Allison Diker, of course, the daughter of Lonene Rogers, sent to me, and I got it Monday, maybe Saturday. And on the front, it says, got to get my beautiful hair out of the way, underestimate me, that'll be fun. And then on the back, it says Lonnie's Angels, and it says hashtag justice for Lonnie. So this is and then I also have, where is it? She also sent me a picture of Lonene right here. See this? And it says Lonene Ray Rogers on it. You can see that right there. She sent it to me. And then on the back, it has a variety of pictures of her. And then it has this writing, just details about her disappearance and about her. So there you go. So I got the shirt, and she sent me this card, which I, of course, will keep right here on my Unfound desk. So there you go. That is what this shirt is. Underestimate me. That'll be fun. Okay. I don't anticipate me, of course, wearing this. It's a really nice shirt. So I don't know how often I'm going to be wearing it, but I'm wearing it tonight. And so, Allison, thank you very much for this. Thank you. This is what the shirt is. Cranberry sauce. Not a big fan of cranberry sauce. Thank you, Suzanne. Yes, like I said, Allison Diker sent it to me. I got it. It seems that she sent it to me before the episode even came out, because I think this got here on Saturday, although I don't think that I got it out of my mail until Monday. There you go. So yes, the shirt and the picture. Once again, here it is right here. And on the back, there we go. And the shirt. Other things going on. I was supposed to play in a disc golf tournament this coming weekend. I've backed out. Too much to do. Too much going on. Too much Unfound work to be done, truthfully. I have some people that I need to talk to this weekend. I need to do an Unfound Now this weekend, which I'll be talking about a little later. And I was going to be playing over in DeBerry and driving the whole way over there and then playing and then driving back, and just too much. It's just too much. I just decided there's just too much to be done. So I got my money back for entering the tournament, and I got my money back for the place that I was going to stay over there. So that's nice. It's nice I could get all of my money back from that. And I'm sure somebody will take my place in the tournament. It was full. So me backing out, first person on the wait list now gets in. And so I'm happy for whoever that is. But this past weekend, though, on Saturday, I was down in Sarasota playing at a place called Lakeview Park, which I have to admit it's one of my more favorite, more likable courses, even though it really doesn't line up with my game very well. But I've played decently there. And it's not a very long course, but it has a lot of water, some trees, a lot of OB, a lot of out of bounds. And I played well. I did okay. Although I finished third, I finished 2 shots out of first, which is okay. I guess, I had a couple of mistakes here and there. What are you going to do? But I played well. And my brother actually came down with me. We rode down together and he walked around. And so we had a good time driving the whole way down there. And then me playing and then coming back. So that was down in Sarasota. So I'm not going to be playing this weekend. So my next time I'm playing an official PDGA sanctioned event is not until Bradenton, which is also south of here, a bit closer than Sarasota. And that is, I think, the December 18th and 19th, I think. So we got a while. We got a few weeks. So that'll be on 2 courses that I've never played before. So I'm anticipating going down there before the tournament gets here to at least do a little bit of throwing down there just to see what these courses are all about. And then after that, next tournament after that will be technically the second weekend in January. I think Christmas is on a Saturday this year. So January 2nd is a Sunday, and then the next weekend, so that would be the 8th and 9th, I will be playing in a tournament right down here at the southern part of Pinellas County down at Maximo. And then I have a whole bunch of tournaments planned for January and February that are already on the schedule. So that is my foreseeable future for my disc golf schedule. As many of you also know, if you were around 3 years ago, that we are quickly coming up on the 3rd anniversary of my mother's death. She died on November 28th, 2018. So that will be this Sunday. The time has just flown. Just does not seem possible. And it's interesting. I know many of you are on Facebook, and you know how you get memories will pop up, something that happened exactly 5 years ago that you posted up. And it's amazing that I'm not getting, I get pop-ups from maybe like a year ago or 5 years ago from November 23rd and 24th or whatever, but nothing from that time because I just, was just a very, very dark time. Once again, some of you who maybe had not found Unfound at that point. My mother had gone into the hospital. I don't know. Maybe November 10th or something. November 12th. And my brother Michael, who is not her son, that's my biological brother. His mother was a biological mother. My mother was Loretta Densel. He had called me after he'd seen my mother in the hospital, and he had said, Ed, you better get up here. So I was up there. I got up there. I forget, maybe around November 17th, and I was going to the hospital every day, and she wasn't getting any better. And then the doctors kind of said, I don't think she's going to make it. So we took all of the life support machines off of her. And as I've said, I was sitting there with her when she died on November 28th. Must have been about 8:45 that night on November 28th. And it was so weird because here she is. She's lying there. And on the TV in her room, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation was on. Just remember that for some reason. So the last 3 years have really been a blur. As you can imagine, I do miss her. And I think that, as I've said many times, Unfound's biggest fan was my mother. And so it's coming up on 3 years. Just so crazy. So crazy. It was a very dark time. I look back and just don't know how I got through all of that. Now, after she died, I stayed there in Pennsylvania until like the end of January of 2019. And, so that was, I spent the whole winter there in Pennsylvania with my dad, which was an experience. But just looking back at that time, getting up in the morning, going to the hospital, being there. And I know many of you have done the same thing. And you just know things are not getting any better. Just the worst. Just the worst. So, as I've said many times, I'm happy that I'll only ever have to do that one more time. Maybe I won't even have to do it. Depends, of course. My father's going to be 85 here on December 1st. But at the most, I will only have to do that one more time, and I'm really happy about it. It'll only be one more time because it's just horrible. Anybody who's been in that position knows how bad it is. So there you go. Suzanne, you asked me about the dentist. I'm going to get to that in a moment. I surely want to talk about my dentist experience. Kathy says, Sheree, my daughter's cooking a roast tomorrow, which is fine with me, but I love turkey. First Thanksgiving meal I have not cooked. Will you take advantage of that, Kathy? You chill out tomorrow. Thank you, Suzanne. CR, she would be so proud of you. I hope she would be, CR. I think she would be. And I continue to say, given what, how she supported the program and what, she gave to me in her passing, I think that, I've done with it exactly what she would have wanted. Okay. There's no doubt in my mind about that. So that is the way I have honored her and how I will continue to honor her for sure. Thank you, CR. Kathy says, so hard losing your parents, siblings too. I lost my parents, 2011 to mid 13. Yeah. Marlene, good evening, Ed, and everyone just came on in, had some pizza, thin crust. Marlene, where did you get that pizza from? And what was on it? If you're going to talk about pizza, you got to tell us what was on it. Got to do that. Tim, I'm sorry that I'm making you tear up. I could talk about it very clearly and plainly these days, 3 years later. And it doesn't get too much to me emotionally. Of course, it's horrible. But as I've told many people, Loretta Dentzel would not have wanted everybody to mope around because she's not here anymore. My mother was all about fun. All about fun. How are we going to have a fun time today? Going to see friends? Is she going to make some crafts for some of her friends? Is she going to go to the casino? Is she going to do this? She was going to do that. My mother was all about having fun, going places, seeing things, and she would not have wanted anybody to mope around because she's not here anymore and get all emotional about it or anything. It's just not that type of person. Now, don't get me wrong. She was a hard ass. Certainly. And it's certainly true that I've picked up a lot of those tendencies myself. But I also think I've picked up the other side of it. I like to have fun too. I'm just not as much of a people person, probably in a public, getting out in the public as much as my mother was. So she loved to go on cruises with my dad and go driving around and go check out little places and everything else. So I think that's why I can talk about it without getting, tearing up or getting emotional about it, because I know that that's not what she would have wanted. She wouldn't have wanted that. Little Bit says they took my nephew off the vent on my middle nephew's wedding and day before their dad's birthday. Sorry to hear that, Little Bit. Yeah. Yeah. Sucks. It does suck. It does. But that's part of life. None of us are as I just said in a recent episode of Unfound, we don't get out of here alive. Now, of course, some belief systems believe that there's something even better out there. We certainly hope they can be true, but other people think there's nothing. I guess we'll all find out. Moving on. Tomorrow, like I said, I'm going over to my brother Brian's, and I think he and I are going to be playing a little disc golf in the morning before kind of work up an appetite and play a little disc golf, and then show up and watch some football, though I'm not watching much football these days, and eat and have a good time. And I enjoy hanging out with them anytime, whether it's Thanksgiving or not. Marlene, Domino's, a medium, extra cheese, sausage, mushrooms, onion. Ooh, baby. And of course, some stuffed cheesy bread. That sounds so good, Marlene. Thank you for sharing. I like Domino's. I like Papa John's. I like all of the franchise pizza places. Little Caesars. I think they're all decent. Maybe I'm just easy to please, but I'd certainly rather eat theirs than like the frozen ones you can get, and put it in the microwave or the oven. I'd certainly prefer Domino's or any of those in contrast to the kind you buy in the grocery store, for sure. Suzanne, you asked me about my dentist. I'm going to tell you about my dentist right now after I put my phone on mute. Hold on a second. All right. See, I have this phone, but I got a new operating system downloaded, and I got to change some of the settings. I don't know how that works. But anyway, the dentist. Last week I talked about how I got a root canal done on a tooth over here. You got to follow this because it's very complex. Not the back tooth out here, but the next to back tooth. Had a huge crack in it, had been there for a couple years. There was no way they were going to be able to put a crown on it. So I went and got a root canal done. Very easy, very smooth, no problem. In an hour, boom, done. The problem is that as soon as the anesthesia went away later that day, I started getting a pain down here. So the work was done up here, but I had a pain down here. And I thought maybe it's just because I had my jaw open for so long or whatever else, but it wasn't going away. And what I noticed is when I would floss, when I would get between the back tooth and the one in front of it, and I went down in there with the floss, man, I was hitting something that would just make me jump right out of my shoes. Like I was hitting a nerve. This was more than just sore gums or something like that. Well, I knew that I had a couple fillings back there that the dentist had already said that were looking a little bad and he wanted to be replaced. And these fillings are probably go back at least 15 years, at least. So I thought, well, who knows what's going on? I'm just going to let it be. But by the time Sunday night, like during the think tank, it was very sore. And so on first thing Monday morning, 8 a.m., I was up. I called my dentist and I said, I need to get in here. It's just the way it is. There's something, After I had the work done here, now my mouth's sore down here. Something has to be done. There's something going on. And so I got in at 9 a.m. yesterday, and it turns out that I was right. What I think happened, although I'll never be able to prove it, is that I think what happened was when I was getting the root canal done up here, of course, the way my head was tilted, and of course, you're using all that water and everything, the water was coming down into this part of my mouth, and then the assistant was getting down here with that suction thing. I think she was using it so hard, I think she hit those teeth and broke that filling. I think that's what, I'll never be able to prove it. But I think that's what happened, because it's a little too coincidental that it happened right at the same time this was getting worked on. So dentist took a look at it and said, yep, this is all cracked up. Looks like it finally gave out over here. So what ended up happening is I got a filling done on the far back tooth, and I got a crown put on the one in front of it. So I've been spending a lot of time at the dentist. And it's not cheap or anything, but as I've said, I try to look at this as an investment and not an expense. I'm hoping this work I'm getting done is going to last me for the rest of my life. If it does, then the cost is really not that much. But if I find myself in the same place 10 years from now, then I'm going to be a little ticked. Well, I guess we'll just have to see. Now, the root canal, it's amazing. It is amazing to me that they can go in there and do all that drilling, doing whatever they're doing up there. And once the anesthesia is gone, I've had no pain since. No soreness, not on the gum, nothing. It's crazy. And even today, with all the work the dentist, and it wasn't the regular dentist, he's out this week. It was another one. The work she did, no soreness at all. It's just crazy how they can do that. And so now what is next is I have to get of course, a crown put on the root canal up here. And this is just a temporary crown down here. So I'll get thing done here for these, and that should be it. I hope. We'll see. So I've been spending a lot of dentist. As I joked on Facebook, the Chinese, they have like the year of the mouse, the year of the goat, the year of the rat. I'm calling 2021 the year of the dentist, because I've certainly spent a lot of time in the dentist chair and spent a lot of money there in the last few months. It's certainly been the year of the dentist after not going to one for like 11 years. I certainly have made up for it this year, but it's for the better. I've talked about this on the live show before. So that's how that all went down. We went from a root canal that went very smoothly, as far as I could tell, to a week later, getting work done on these teeth, which we're going to get worked on anyway. But I think the dentist was thinking that he was just going to be able to replace those. But once this thing cracked and everything, they just had to get a little more serious on it. So that's my, it's amazing how they get those little cameras and they can take the pictures and they can show you where the cracks are and everything. It's just amazing. And it really is not, I used to be fearful of going to the dentist. I used to be fearful of flying too. I just hate flying now because you're all cooped up. I don't have a fear of it. So with the dentist, I guess I'm kind of over that fear now, being that I've been, 5 or 6 times over the last 3 months now, or, maybe not even that, 2.5 months. It's been crazy. So that's my dentist story, Suzanne. I will be going back on December, the first Tuesday in December, to get a couple of those things that I just mentioned completed. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Marlene. Yeah, you go call your mom a little bit. She'll love to hear from you. Okay. All right. So that's the personal stuff going on in my life. Some of the highlights since the last time You saw me. Some decent disc golf play this weekend. I shot even, by the way, to the guy who won, my friend Chuck, shot 2 under. Happy for him. And all this stuff. Okay, let's answer a question. And Suzanne says, tooth pain is the worst. Oh, Suzanne, it is. You just can't. I've had I had a frozen shoulder back in 2013. I've pulled a muscle here and there once in a while. Tooth pain is so much worse. You can't think. It's the tough thing when you have that. Like last week, trying to get the episode done and take an Advil and all that. It's not easy when you have to sit there and you have to write or record and try to concentrate, and you just got this over there. It's just tough. Suzanne says, you're not kidding, Suzanne. Yeah, okay. Let's move on to a question. Charlotte, who I know is in here. I see you, Charlotte. I'm going to answer your question first tonight. Great question, by the way. Charlotte asks me, what or who was the biggest influence on you to start Unfound? As I've said many times, I've always been interested in mysteries going back to being a little kid. Always. However, I would say when it comes to the influences of how I conduct the program, and I've also said that I constructed Unfound to be the kind of missing persons program that I would want to listen to. I want to hear from the people who knew the missing person the best. They usually have the most information. I want to make sure when I listen to a podcast that when it's over, that I understand what happened. And that the person who is doing the hosting asks the right questions, allows the guest to speak. If there is anything that is unclear, the host notices it and does follow-up questions. And I want to make sure when any documentary, even when I watch on TV or something on YouTube, that when I come away from it, I have a pretty good idea of all the facts and timelines and things. So that was in my mind when I started Unfound. But I will tell you that some of my influences when it comes to interviewing people, before, when I knew that it was going to be an interview program, that I took a long listen to people who do a lot of interviewing and try to pick up on them and try to take some of what they're doing and do it on my own. Now, the interesting thing is none of these people do anything close to true crime and disappearances, but they are known for being good interviewers and being very in-depth and intuitive, kind of sensing where the conversation is going and kind of just going with the flow of it. And some of those would be Peter Robinson. He is a guy from the Hoover Institute in California. He was actually a speechwriter for Ronald Reagan back in the 80s. He does a lot of interviewing out there with people from all walks of life. Russ Roberts, he does a program on econtalk.org. I think he's a spectacular interviewer. So I listen to a lot of him. Charlie Rose, of course, pre-sex scandal Charlie Rose. I think people have always thought, going back when he was on PBS and elsewhere, that he was an excellent interviewer. Of course, all the famous people that he had on his program, that I have listened or watched a lot of Charlie Rose old episodes of his show going back, 25 years. And then on top of everybody else, Johnny Carson, who might be the best interviewer, best show host who's ever lived, as far as asking questions, having people on his program, talking to them, getting them to say things and reveal things. And being that I kind of grew up in that era of when the 80s into the early 90s, when he was popular, he was still on TV. And you, of course, can find a lot of his shows on YouTube, and even there's some, I forget what channel it is on TV. They played old reruns of shows going back to the 1970s, him interviewing Frank Sinatra and Bo Derek and everybody else. So those are kind of the influences for me that when I think about who I was trying to craft my interview style after. Of course, these people all come from very different walks of life and what they were talking to people about. Of course, Johnny Carson, a little more humor on the humor side of things. And what I think I learned from all of them is you must be interested in what the guest has to say. And because of that, I realize all of you, I don't know how many hosts can really say this. Of course, nobody does as many interviews as I do, but and nobody quite does them like I do either. But I know that people do not tune into Unfound to listen to me. The truth is, on any Unfound episode, my part where I'm just by myself is only about 13 to 15 minutes. And we know that the episodes usually go around 2 hours. So the rest of the time is me interviewing somebody. You're tuning in to hear what that person has to say, not what I have to say. Now, my job is to guide the conversation. My job is to ask the right questions. If something is unclear, I need to do follow-ups. I try to ask the questions that I think all of you would if you were in my shoes. But you, even though I know all of you like me, you think Unfound is great and everything else, but I always try to remember that the viewers or the listeners are not tuning in because of me. Now, you may be tuning in tonight on these live shows because of me, but when it comes to the Friday episodes, I always try to remember these people are downloading and listening because of the guest, not because of you. And so it's my job to make sure that the guest comes across as well as possible. And that's why we do interview outlines, and that's why I talk to the guests a few times before we do an official interview and everything else. And no, I think what I would say is no other true crime host speaks as little as I do. So those are some of my influences, Charlotte. That's my attitude toward it. And that's always been since day one. That there are people that it's a program that I would want to listen to if I was one of you. I have an idea of the kind of interviews that I want to do. And so I kind of looked into that, even though still it was mostly on the job training at the beginning. And I just try to remember that I am not the star of the episodes. The guests are. The missing person is. I am not. I'm just a supporting cast here. That's all I am. So, hello, Linda. What's going on, Linda? Good to see you tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Suzanne says, I really enjoyed your interview with Johnny. I'm going to get to that, Suzanne. Thank you. Thank you. Suzanne, I really enjoy your interviews. Always ask the best questions. Well, I try to, Suzanne, trying to learn. Kathy says you have to engage with the person you are interviewing. I was always engaging in many, many interviews I did on my cases on my job. There you go, Kathy. So that's the answer to your question, Charlotte. All right, so let's move on to some other items. Being that I showed you this picture, Lonene, of course, this was last Friday's episode. The Rogers poll. The question that I asked in the discussion group was, if Clinton did cause Lonene's disappearance, do you believe he worked alone? Did he do it all alone? Sort of unclear. The poll was very, very close, and there were people that even said, we just don't know. Now, as far as the think tank goes, I will admit that really was not a major point of discussion in the think tank. So I really, you know how I like to compare what did the think tank say compared to what the discussion group decided. What does the discussion group think compared to what the think tank? And many times, that they differ. Can't do that this week because we really didn't focus on that. It was a little part of the discussion, but it was not a major part of it. So I can't do any comparing and contrasting on that. But I will tell you for the blog at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast, what I wrote about this week for Lonene's disappearance is that the man said types of disappearances are some of the most solvable if the police officers who show up at the time know what they're looking at. And so I write about the reason that some of these disappearances that seem so obvious to us, of course, Lonene's 40 years old, was it not obvious at the beginning of what happened? It should have been, but I don't think it was. It was obvious to Lonene's family, but I'm not so sure it was obvious to the responding police officer. And I think the problem is too often the police officers who show up, they believe the guy too much. And so I wrote about that for, once again, Patreon blog, patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. So that was really my topic because Lonene's disappearance, there's not a ton to analyze. There are not a lot of suspects besides Clinton. And so there's not a lot of analysis and how you break it all down like can be done in other disappearances, any of them that we've covered since the beginning. Some of them are fairly obvious and many aren't. I think with Lonene's, it's fairly obvious. But I still want to give Patreon people their money's worth. And so I thought it was a good time to talk about that type of disappearance and the problems that need to be fixed regarding that. Yeah, please remember to hit the thumbs up button as you are watching. Linda says, I'm bummed I missed the Think Tank Sunday. Well, Linda, you can still hit the link and see what everybody had to say. You still have access to that. Marlene says, I loved your interview with Marie Parker and Suncia. I know I'm behind. I'm catching up. Will you take your time catching up, Marlene? Yeah, Marie and Suncia were great guests for Audrey Herron's disappearance. Alice, hello, Ed. How are you? I'm doing fantastic because I'm talking to all of you, Alice. And thank you, Alice. You're very kind. Thank you. And thank you for posting that, Cherie. So that was the Rogers poll. Still very unclear whether Clinton caused the disappearance all himself or did he get help? Of course, maybe there are people who don't think he did anything. But the poll in the discussion group was mezza, as they say in Italian. Moving on. Somebody's already brought up that thank you for giving the thumbs up. Oh, thumbed up here, Ed. Thank you, Alice. That's a funny way to put that, Alice. Funny. I think Susanna or somebody had already stated, yes, that I was on John Lordan's Case Cracked program. It came out last Friday. We had done the interview the day before in the morning. I actually interviewed him first, and I'll get to that. And then I went over to the computer right here, as you know, and we did that recording regarding Steve Pankey. I will tell you, I always love talking to John. We exchange emails probably more than all of you know. Maybe Cherie knows because we've talked about it. But I don't know, maybe a couple times a month we send emails back and forth. And I had said, even before I went out to Colorado, being that I knew that he had tangentially been connected to Steve Pankey and Janelle Matthews' murder, that maybe it might be interesting once I went out to Colorado and came back that we could do a show. He could ask me about being out there and we could talk about it after the trial was over. So the trial was over. And so we made it happen. So I interviewed him, and I'll get to that in a moment. But he interviewed me. And I guess probably the most surprising thing in talking to him about the trial is he was fairly sure that Steve was going to be found guilty. I can tell you this. In just reading from the Greeley Tribune, the accounting of each day of what was going on, I was not surprised at all that it was a hung jury at all. Not surprised at all. And of course, we talked about that. So being that John said that, it was interesting because we both kind of do the same thing. I, of course, am exclusive to disappearances. He does cover some disappearances like Jason Landry's, but he does a lot of different things. Whereas I'm, a specialist in one area. But I don't really think that matters. And I don't even really think that it matters that I took part in the trial and that he didn't. I just think it's interesting. We both have similar backgrounds. We've been doing this for about the same amount of time, and we come away with two different impressions. So that was interesting. And so I enjoyed talking to him. And it's interesting because when I interviewed him like I interview anybody else for the program. I do it with an outline. So I typed something up, sent it to him, and that's what we followed for the interview I did with him, and it was like 2 hours long. Whereas him talking to me, it was just kind of whatever came up. So, and I'm prepared to do that. So I really did not know some of the questions he was going to ask me. Maybe they were predictable, but it was not an outline like I do for all of the guests of Unfound, even Steve Panky himself. So I thought that being on there with John, him interviewing me, us talking was really good. And maybe we will work together again in 2022 on something. I can't predict what, but hopefully we can make that happen next year. Sharon, you're very generous. Thank you very much. What Sharon has done there is she has used the super chat button. That's that little gray square with the $sign in the middle that you can contribute monetarily to Unfound. And that's what Sharon has done. Thank you, Sharon, very, very much. Love / yeah. Patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. And also paypal.me/Unfound Podcast. I have to tell you, Sharon, that is not, unfortunately, an original kind of thing that I do. When Dennis Miller from Saturday Night Live had his radio show, he doesn't anymore, but years ago when he had it, when he would be telling people where to go on his website to look at something, that's what he would do. He would always stress that / and I guess subliminally, I've now picked it up as well. So that's kind of where it comes from. Suzanne says it sure is strange that Steve's still paying on Patreon on some true crime shows, but Steve is strange. That is true. And I want to point out something. I was right when we were talking about that, when John was interviewing me and he was pointing out how Steve was still contributing to a variety of shows, but he was not contributing to Unfound anymore. I went back and checked, and I was right. Steve was a Patreon supporter of Unfound from August to December of 2019. That was it. So I'm glad I got that right, but I was pretty sure. Had I known John was going to ask me that, I would have checked for sure. But I had no idea. I could have never predicted, though, that there is some checking account or credit card that Steve has. He's in jail and he's still paying these different programs like $1 a month or whatever else. Nobody's more surprised by that than I am. But I can assure you that what I said in my interview with John was correct. That he interviewed me, and pretty much right after the interview came out, or I interviewed him, and pretty much after the interview came out, in early November of 2019, he stopped his Patreon support. And once again, I think I knew that. I discovered that sometime in 2020. I just really hadn't thought about it for a while. And then John asked me about it, and I was like, I don't think he's a supporter anymore. And he wasn't. And he hasn't been one for a long time. Thank you so much for yes, Shri, thank you. Spleen says, I know he's not a patron anymore, but did Steve ever try to join the think tank? Spleen, I have no idea. The thing is, you can join the think tank, but not comment. You can just sit on the link and watch. But as soon as his Patreon support ended, then he has no access to any of it anymore. So I don't know. All I know is that, could he have, maybe he tuned in for that think tank and saw what everybody had to say? Could have. But I don't even remember if I was even thinking that at the time. Yes, the proceedings in the think tank are private, but the reason I do that is not because I'm ashamed or afraid of anything that's discussed there. I'm not. The reason it's private is because I want the people who are part of the think tank to know that they can speak freely. And there aren't a million eyeballs on it. And that's the reason. The fact is, what we discussed in the think tank is pretty much, like any discussion all of you might have, but it's in a very private setting that people are free to express any sort of view they have on the disappearance, even if it's like, well, that guest didn't seem to know very much or whatever. I'm not saying that's ever been said, but I just want everybody, I don't want anybody to be shading their comments one way or another because they think that it's going to be read by people outside of it. Did Steve get to watch or follow the think tank after Janelle's episode came out? Maybe, but I have to admit, being it's been 2 years now, I really don't even remember any of the particular points from that think tank that I had with the members at the time. Maybe. I think that's a good question, Spleen. But maybe he did, but I don't remember him chiming in at all, but he might have watched it. And really, when it comes down to it, I don't specifically remember what was said in that particular think tank. If we even talked about Janelle's murder that much, we have to remember that came out on a Monday. So we would have had to have combined Janelle's, that interview with Steve, along with whatever the episode was on that Friday together. I would have to go back and check and see what it was all about and how much really in depth we got into it. All right. So the other side of it was me interviewing John, and it was a 2-hour interview. You know how I like to do long interviews. And I thought it was a great discussion. I love talking shop with another host about the true crime community. What's going on? What is he seeing? The relationship between the true crime community and programs and the law enforcement, the legal profession, the mainstream media, all of it. And then eventually we got around to talking about his involvement in the Netflix show regarding Elissa Lam. And it's disgusting. What they did to John is disgusting. Disgusting. And this is the reason that you will probably never, ever see me involved with anything like that. Ever. I don't want to deal with it. I don't need it. I know why John did it. I don't think he could have ever predicted what would happen. But I think even in his own way, I think that he thinks, if he was ever given that opportunity again, he might not do it. I think I don't think I'm not going to speak for John. He has his own program. He can speak for himself, but that's like a person's worst nightmare when you're put into a complex position due to nothing that you did. You have no control over what happened, and you know that it all got manipulated into in a way that made things untrue. And they did it on purpose. They screwed John over and whoever else on purpose. Don't forget that. On purpose. And that's why when I've had discussions with TV people, and I know somebody even asked me about that, is that one of the questions? That was one of the questions. I didn't write it down though, but whoever asked that question, if I've talked to anybody about TV stuff recently, no, I haven't. But when I have, even though these discussions were well before John was ever on the Netflix show, I kind of know how this goes. Editing is manipulation in movies, in documentaries, all of it. It's supposed to be that way. And because of that, though, you never know how the final product is what it's going to look like and what you're going to look like when it does come out. As has often been said about movies, you can shoot a movie and through editing, you can make it look like anything. You can make it look like a sci-fi movie, a comedy, a drama, a suspense thriller, just on editing alone. Keep the scene same, keep the line the same, everything. But just on editing alone, you can make it into any genre of film you want. This is one of the reasons I'm so picky and why I'm so demanding when I've spoken to TV people who have approached me. Yeah, I'll be involved, but, and as John and I talked about, it's not the editor's reputation who's on the line. It's not the producer's reputation that's on the line. It's John's that was. It would be mine or any other host that would be involved because this is what we do all the time. And with these editors, they're editing the Alyssa Lamb documentary show on Netflix this week. They're editing a Britney Spears documentary next week. I'm just making that up. What do they care how it eventually affects John or anybody else? And that's what happens, though, when you put your reputation in somebody else's hands. So as I have here, the main reason you will probably never see me involved with anything, I would have to be the producer with final cut approval, and nobody's going to give me that. So there you go. But it was a great discussion. Love talking to John about what we do, how he got into it. He came to it, I think, from a little different angle in starting his programs than I did. And it is interesting that he does have an entertainment background like mine. And he's a big Star Trek fan like I am. So there are, I guess, some similarities there. But I think maybe going back further than that, I don't know if he's always been interested. I don't know if it was if it was clear in going back to childhood. I don't know how old John is. I think I'm older than he is. Maybe I think. But for me, mine goes back. My story usually starts at my childhood. So maybe we're a little different in that way. But it is funny, though, that being that he worked for Cirque du Soleil and I lived in Las Vegas and he had to drive all that. He talked about driving all their equipment after that show shut down in LA out to Las Vegas. And he had been to some of the shows that I've been to. It's just so weird. It's just lives almost intersecting. It's really crazy. Let's see what everybody else is saying here. A little bit. Can you not see who is watching you on YouTube? You can't. You can only see who is commenting. So right now, I can see how many people are viewing a little bit, but I don't know every viewer who is out there. The only people who I know, for sure are anybody who comments in the chat. I have no way to see who's watching. At least I don't think I do. No, I don't. John is a winner. He certainly is. Marlene, the Brian Schaefer special. I'm going to get to that. So you just hold on. Alice, happy Thanksgiving. And well, to you too, Alice. Boston, happy Thanksgiving to you too. I love the little turkey, the picture there. That's fun. Screaming says Tiger King would probably be a comedy / drama no matter how they edited it, though. Well, that's maybe. I didn't watch it, Screaming, so I get it. But yeah, I think technically, creatively, yes, probably. Screaming, don't even know why I even wasted my time watching that show. That's I didn't watch it. Yes, Kathy, I'm going to talk about that. Shri says, John is the same age as me. Well, being Shri, I know how old you are, but we'll not get into that. So I am older than he is. Okay, but not by much. CR says, as a viewer, you can watch incognito. That's true. Okay. Let's go to another question. And this one was from Christy. She wanted to remind me that I had mentioned posting a piano video back in my playing days. I think I will have time to do that this weekend. Being that I'm not going to be playing in that tournament, I will be here. The issue will be I have to get into my VHS tapes. And will the VCR, I have a VCR, or it's a combination VCR and DVD player. It'll just be if the tape plays or not. I got it to work earlier this year when I posted a clip from me performing in high school in a Happy Days musical. But something happened right at the end of that to that tape. I'm not sure if it's the machine or that tape. So if I can find one of my piano recitals from back in the day on VHS, and I can get the VHS to work, all I have to do is play it on the TV, and I'll get my phone or my tablet to point at the TV and record it. If I can get that all to work, I will post something this weekend. I promise. There you are, Jill. Hello. Well, welcome back. Welcome back. So that was Christy's question, because I had mentioned a couple weeks ago, well, I'll have to get into my piano videos and see if I can find something. I've not done that yet, I will admit, but I promised to get it done this weekend. I will have the time. I really did not have the time this past weekend. Moving on, Heidi Plank, she's still missing in LA. She's missing. Her car's missing. I still say anything is possible. She certainly seemed to have lived a life that had a lot of drama in it. Drama caused maybe by her own choices, maybe her own mental instability, being involved in a company that was stealing from people or was committing fraud or something. A lot going on in her life. So I continue to say that anything is possible. It could be foul play. It could be a suicide. It could be she just completely lost her mind and drove off into the middle of nowhere, into Death Valley, California or something. I don't know. Anything is possible. She could have driven across the United States. I really cannot make a prediction right now. Just can't. Now, on that topic of a recent disappearance, this weekend, along with, I guess, see if I can put a piano video together, I will be doing a new Unfound Now on this channel for this weekend. Will it be Heidi Planks? Probably not, because I've already spoken about it so much on this live show the last couple of weeks. And I've kind of analyzed it already. It is, don't get me wrong, it is certainly a disappearance where you can learn a lot about how to look at disappearances, certainly. You have to look at the person. What was that person involved in? What was her tendencies? Did she have a criminal record? what the other people say about her, all relevant when looking at a disappearance. But being that I've already talked about it so much, probably not going to make it the Unfound Now for this weekend. I will start looking at different recent disappearances probably on Friday in preparation to do this Unfound, the next Unfound Now episode on Saturday or Sunday. But Heidi Plank still missing her car. What was it? A Land Rover, Range Rover. Still missing as well. Could be anywhere. Both of them could be anywhere. Speaking of Saturday, I'm just going to throw this out there. Cherie and I are going to be having a telephone conversation on Saturday. She came up with an idea. I'm not going to blow it yet, Cherie. Not going to reveal it. Of course, we still have a lot of talking to do regarding it, but Cherie has come up with an interesting idea for a new addition to the Unfound repertoire of content that we provide. Of course, we have the regular episodes every Friday. We have the Unfound Nows. I do this live show. You know that my assistant Natasha turns the audio show into a video show with pictures and everything that she eventually posts to YouTube. You know, I do map analysis videos, a lot of different things. Well, Cherie has come up with a little bit of an idea, and I like it. So we are going to be discussing it a little bit more this weekend. I'm looking forward to it. And maybe that will be something new for the year 2022. We'll just have to see. So, Cherie, I'm looking forward to that conversation. Great idea. Boston. I really enjoy the outline that you follow for your interviews. It's very thorough and flows well. Boston, you know, I have to admit, Boston, I don't even know. You know, I don't know. As all of you know, I don't watch or listen to many other true crime programs. Just don't have the time, a lot of different reasons. So I don't even know if creating outlines is a thing. Even for programs that aren't true crime, I don't even know if it's a thing. I'm guessing that many people have notes that they use and they want to make sure that they hit certain topics. But I think for me, Boston, the reason I do outlines is because there was a time when I did a lot of writing, fiction writing, novel writing, and you have to do outlines for those. You have to keep everything organized. You have multiple characters, multiple locations. You have a plot or plots, plural, and certain things have to get done. And this could even go back to when I was doing some screenplay writing in the early 2000s, that you always had to know where you're going first before you get there. It's like flying. Never fly anywhere that your mind hasn't been 5 minutes before. And so I think that outlines have just become a part of me when it comes to planning things out that are going to be very complex. Some people aren't confident doing that. And it just seemed very natural to me when I started doing interviews for Unfound. I think it got started on the other true crime podcast that I did before Unfound, in which I contacted Caroline Lowe, who, of course, has now been on Unfound twice. And that when I was going to be talking to her for the first time, and I remember where I was when I talked to her. I was over in Daytona for a disc golf tournament. It was a Friday, and I was sitting in my car, and I was calling her up because we had covered Jody's Who's and Truth's disappearance on that other program. And so I had called Caroline to get some information, and I can remember writing or typing something up and having it with me in the car when I called her. So even before I started Unfound, when it came to talking to people, I was already kind of thinking about this. Not that I knew that Unfound would become a thing when I talked to Caroline at that point. So it's just become something that is imperative for any interview that I do. We do not do interviews off the top of our heads. And I'm sure that if you were to see the interview outlines that I construct, you'd probably be amazed how closely they're followed. How closely they're followed. And the guest gets them, they get to look over them, they get to give the thumbs up, thumbs down, we change things, we take things out, we add things. And so that's eventually how the interview becomes what it is. But as complex as many of these disappearances are, I don't know how you could interview somebody without doing something like that if you really, really wanted to be complete. So I like putting them together. There is kind of a artistic quality to them because when I make them, I'm trying to think like all of you. What is going to be the easiest way to explain what happened here? Do we do everything in retrospect? Do we cover it just in a linear timeline? Or do we look back? We do a little bit of both. It just depends. Depends who the guest is. It depends when the guest found out about the disappearance. It depends on a lot of different things. So it's just an imperative. And some of those outlines take at least a couple hours to put together. At least. But I feel that I can't do any interviews without them. Lauren Cho, yeah, Charlotte, I know the name, just don't know much about it. Sheree, looking forward to it. Well, excellent, Sheree, for this Saturday. Boston says, also, hope it's okay to say that I appreciate you keeping last week's guest on track. I can only imagine she had so much that she wants to say, and it's hard to stay on track with a racing mind. Boston, I think that the guests appreciate the outlines too. As I tell guests, please use this as a study guide. Go through it. Not only look at it and say, yeah, this all makes sense, but look at some of the sample questions I have in there. Do you know the answers? Can you come up with the answers off the top of your head? If you can't, then start jotting things down. This isn't some sort of political program where I'm trying to catch a politician in a gotcha moment. Like they said one thing one time, but then they said something different over here. That's not what I do. I want people to be prepared. Even with Steve Pankey, it's the same thing. That I had an outline, gave it to him, he approved it, and we did the interview. And I think that many of the guests do find the outline to be helpful. As you're pointing out, Boston, we're talking about very difficult circumstances, and their minds do race. And sometimes they are afraid that everything that they want to say isn't going to be heard. Whereas with the outline, then they know that we are going to cover everything and they are going to be heard. So I think that the outline puts them at ease. Boston says, I could feel it while listening. I feel for these families. You too, of course, do. Yeah, I'm very patient. It's funny you say that, Boston, because somebody else sent a message to me over Messenger within the last few weeks saying how patient I am. And it's kind of funny because I think in my everyday life, I'm not a very patient person. Not at all. Not at all. I want things done now. I like things done now. When it comes to my disc golf playing or anything else that I'm doing in my life, I want it to improve now. I'm not the most patient person. But when it comes to the interviews, I think that doing the outlines actually makes the interviews go easier and faster. I mean, I can't imagine, once again, I can't imagine doing any of these interviews without them. I mean, any of them, whether it's some really complex one like Cameron Remmer or Tom Brown, or something that's maybe a little bit more straightforward, like Lonene Rogers is. Either way, I don't know. I don't know how people do it otherwise. Screamy says it's always helpful for the missing person's family and or friends to see things from an outside perspective. Yeah. Boston says you help them stay on track, and during the podcast and for your listeners, it's very helpful. Well, Boston, sometimes it's, remember, not every interview goes exactly as planned. There are times where we have to take a break, and because sometimes I get confused, sometimes the guest gets confused, and then I have to say, we have to stop for a second. Let's talk this out. Of course, that is edited out of the final cut of the interview, but that doesn't happen very often, but it does happen even with an outline. And sometimes people get ahead of themselves. And I know sometimes you'll hear me say, well, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that, because I'm very cognizant of the fact that the information has to be released in a certain way. And if you release too much at the one time, people don't hear it. So I want to always make sure that the information is coming out at a slow, steady rate. And that's how the interviews are done. Delane, did you realize tonight's live is labeled as a think tank? That would have been me, that Delane, that did that, and that was a mistake. I do make mistakes once in a while. It's a think tank. It's certainly not a think tank. And I will go back and change that afterwards, Delane. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you. I didn't realize that. Okay. Let's go to another question. And this Jill's question. I'm now seeing it. Jill, when listening to your interview with John Lordan, you spoke of talking with TV shows. What is the status of that? Jill, pretty much nowhere. I think that, I really don't know how these things go. I know how John Lordan got involved with the Alyssa Lamb show. We now know that. You heard about that. And he's talked about, I know many of you listen to John's show, all of the stuff that he puts out on his channel. You don't need to hear it from me. But really, Jill, I just discontinued to do Unfound. Anytime that any talk of a TV show or a documentary or anything, it's always been them contacting me, not me sending feelers out to anybody. In fact, the only outreach that we do at Unfound are two ways. One, of course, for family members, for guests, through Emily, myself, Cherie, once in a while, other people. Marky Davis helps us with finding some guests. Outreach that way, or outreach like we're doing, so I can speak at some more schools in 2022. That's really the only outreach that we do. We are not out there trying to get the attention of any film producers, TV producers. Of course, there are podcast companies like Wondery. We don't do any of that. Because when you start reaching out in those particular situations, then it puts them in the power position and you in the non-power position. Whereas I always want to be, frankly, I'm going to be honest. I always want to be able to say when somebody, talking to somebody about a TV show, I'm just going to say to them, if they think I'm being too demanding, hey, you contacted me. Okay. I didn't contact you. You contacted me. It's great. I appreciate it. But this is the only way I'm going to work with you. That's just the way I am. I didn't bring this up. You brought this up. And these are my standards. So, Jill, it's really kind of nowhere, but these things can change from day to day. Over the last 5 years, I've spoken to a couple places about actually fiction shows, like Law and Order or something. And I've spoken quite a few times about nonfiction shows, documentaries. And neither has gone anywhere. It's tough business. Maybe it has something to do with COVID. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not really banking on that at all. I think all of you by now know that my interests lie elsewhere. But if the right situation comes along and I can get things the way I want, then I guess the answer will be yes. Yeah, okay. Marlene's also saying it's labeled as a think tank. That's kind of funny. Okay. Thank you, Boston. Thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. All right. We have one more question to follow. And so Jennifer, if you're watching, I have not forgotten to you, but I'm going to get to you in the next 40 minutes because you have a good question too. Brian Landry, coroner's report is out and he did commit suicide, they said. And I'm going to guess it was probably not long after he was last seen down just south of here. And in fact, I drove right by that area when I went down to Nova Southeastern University a few weeks ago. I go right by that area, Northport, Port Charlotte, North Fort Myers, Estero, Venice, Florida, that area. I went right by it. But he committed suicide. And as I stated at the time, I had high doubts. Oh, somebody saw Brian Landry on this trail up in Virginia or West Virginia. He was seen here. He was seen there. All of it obviously was not true. And this is one more reason that I continue to say that most sightings of missing people, whether they are a suspect like Brian Landry was, or actually a missing person, possibly a victim, any sightings after the accepted date of the disappearance should be viewed with a high sense of doubt. Just why? For all the reasons I've talked about over the last 5 years. That's not how the mind works. People love infusing themselves into the process. People actually think they're helping when they come forward, when they know that they're lying on and on and on. There might be a reward out there, and we know all about that. And but he committed suicide. Am I surprised by that? I don't know. I followed it. I talked about it a little bit. I know many of you followed it much more than I did. Could be a couple things. Maybe he felt guilty. I'm going to guess many of you don't think that he thought like that, but it's choice. Maybe he felt guilty about it. Maybe he knew he wasn't going to get away. Maybe he was just troubled in the first place. I think there could be a lot of different reasons. I'm guessing many of you will say, well, he committed suicide because he was afraid of getting caught. Certainly possible. But there are other, I think, possibilities. There have been many men who have killed their girlfriends and wives who then killed themselves, out of guilt, realizing what they did and thinking, oh, that was the worst thing ever. And then other ones kill themselves because they're trying to get away and they know they're not going to get away and they know they're going to go to jail and they don't want to live with that. And so they kill themselves. And that very well could be what Brian Landry did as well. Yeah, a little bit. You did your live tonight. I'm sorry that I missed it a little bit. Has her own group. I hope it went well a little bit, but I did not get to watch it. A little too busy preparing for this live show, but Little Bit has I did a kind of a Q&A for your group a little bit. What's it called? Stitching, Bitching, and True Crime or something like that. I don't like using that word. I try to keep this PG. But Little Bit, why don't you just post the name of it in here so people can know about it? I did a Q&A for you. Hopefully it brought you some publicity for your true crime group on Facebook. Why don't you type out the name and so people can go find it? I've not had a chance to watch what you did tonight, but I think CR saying you did very well. So I'm going to believe CR. Sheree says guilt is my opinion also as to why Brian Laundrie shot himself. CR says I think the fear of jail. So Sheree and CR agree. Charlotte says I think he didn't want to have to explain what he did. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Type that out a little bit so people can see your group. Now, I know that somebody already brought this up and it is on the agenda. The Brian Schaefer special. And I did watch it. I DVR'd it and then watched it later. I thought that Kelly Bruce did a fantastic job, and I'll have you know that I have spoken to Kelly since the show came out on Sunday. Really can't get into what we talked about, but we did talk about it. I thought that it was good. You should also know that I know the other woman who was interviewed in that, Lori Davis. I know her too, even though she's never been on the program, but I have spoken to her many times that about Brian's disappearance, and she has helped me with some other cases that we have featured on Unfound. It was good. And I think everybody who took part in it did a fine job. As you would expect, I think for both Kelly and Lori and anybody else they interviewed, I'm sure they did hours and hours of interviews, and you got to see like 10 minutes of what these people had to say. That's just the way TV is. And that's just the way it is. That's the way it's always going to be. It's not a podcast where I can interview somebody for 2 hours and you get to hear everything the person said. Just like the Alyssa Lamb show with John Lordan, where he was interviewed quite a bit and then his words were diced up into a certain storyline. That's kind of what happened here. But I think that Kelly, I have not spoken to Lori since Sunday, but I have spoken to Kelly. I think she thought it came out very well. So where does that leave us, though? Probably the biggest issue, and somebody even posted that I am a member of the Find Brian Schaefer group on Facebook. Somebody posted on there, it would be nice if they released all of the video from that night. I agree. They should. As I stated, did I actually say this in the episode when we covered Brian's disappearance back in May, and of course Kelly was the guest? Did it actually come out during the interview, or did I say it during the episode, or did I write it on Patreon? I can't remember. But I will tell you this. This is just coming from my experience. To believe that a police officer, who it doesn't sound to me was actually even responsible for Brian's disappearance, to believe that a police officer took all the video home, watched it all by himself, hours and hours and hours, and from that, we get that Brian went into the Ugly Tuna and never came out, is just not good enough for me. It's just not. The reason is because this guy might be a go-getter. Maybe he's the chief of police now. Maybe he just knew how to climb the corporate ladder that is the Columbus Police Department, and he thought that is what he needed to do. Certainly possible. But in my experience, I have never heard, and we've covered about 230 disappearances now. Not all of them have video, but I have never heard of a police officer taking video home and watching it at home in his spare time. I have never heard that. And so because of that, maybe this guy's Dudley Do-Right. Granted, I wish more police officers did this, but I know they don't. In fact, it's very much the opposite. We all know how so many of these investigations, they don't get video and they don't watch it. So to believe it's the exact opposite in Brian's stretches my imagination just from an experience point of view. I don't know who this police officer is. I don't know if it's a guy or a girl. I don't know if it was an experienced law enforcement officer of 25 years or a person new on the job. I don't know any of it. All I know is I've never heard of that before. And it's on the strength of that that we all believe that Brian went into the Ugly Tuna and never came out. Whereas I have to believe that, I mean, you saw the quality of the video. You've seen it many times. I'm sure you've watched it on YouTube. You watched it on that TV show. And it's this video of him riding up that escalator and then talking to those girls later. How many times has everybody viewed it? We know the quality of it is not very good. Why? Because that was the quality of video 15 years ago. Now it would have like 4K and it'd be like a million pixels per square inch and everything else. It just really challenges I'm not saying this, I don't want to call somebody a liar or anything else. But it's a lot of video. And being that I've experienced in this area, for example, with Tom Brown's disappearance, coincidentally, it's the 5-year anniversary of his disappearance tonight. I want to talk about that before we're done. Given that I watched all of that video that Penny had sent me hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, but there's a difference. I'm a single guy. I have no kids. This is my program. This is what I do. I am not an employee who only gets paid when I'm on the job. And so I have time to do these things. I've devoted my life to it. That is surely not the situation that this person was in with this video from Brian Schaefer's disappearance. He took it upon himself or herself to do this. So I just don't know. But I continue to believe that the reason that Brian's disappearance has gotten all the attention is because of that fact alone. He went into a bar and never came out. It's almost like that joke. Brian Schaefer walks in, two guys walk into a bar. Well, it's Brian Schaefer walked into a bar and never came out. And I'm still not sure that that is the situation. I would also put that with, we hear so many weird stories about disappearances, but then when you have the person on the program, they kind of straighten things out. For example, we just had this recently with the Audrey Herron disappearance. What did you hear? For all of these years, there was a story. Yeah, this automotive transmission place had a video. It had this vehicle, this Jeep that stopped out in front or down the road on the night that Audrey went missing, and everybody's sure it was her and everything else. I got to talk to the New York State Police. Now, they could be lying, but I don't think they are. If they could have just said, we have no comment on the video. Could have said that. But what did they say? Nothing on the video was helpful. So we know we have stories that exist for a long time, and then when you actually talk to a person who is in a position to know, they clear it all up. No, that's not really what it is at all. This Brian Schaefer whole video situation sounds like that. It sounds like that. I think the other point that came out of the special, it came out in the episode, but I think this is the first time that the point was made on a TV program covering Brian's disappearance, is the whole check thing. This check was meant for his tuition, but it was never cashed. And I think that that's a new piece of information that is just now making it into the public. So I thought that was good regarding the show as well. I will tell you that Brian Schaefer's disappearance, I know this is going to sound so weird, but I don't even think Brian Schaefer's disappearance is that mysterious. To me, Jason Jolkowski's is way more mysterious. If you want to put him in that category, as far as, what went on and what could have gone on and what's so surprising and everything. We know we've had many disappearances on Unfound that are fairly straightforward. And, for example, the past Friday's Lonene Rogers. What we have to consider is that there are a lot of young men who are drinking, who go into bars, then leave, then disappear, and they end up dead. It just so happens in Brian's that his remains haven't been found yet. And then there's this whole thing about him not being seen coming out of the bar. And why wasn't he seen down on the street and everything else? I don't believe there was foul play. I don't believe that he went off to start a new life. It seems to me that Brian Schaefer was a very troubled young man. That's what I think most people should concentrate on with his disappearance, and not the fact that whether or not he was seen on a video leaving the Ugly Tuna Saloon. But I would still maintain it would be nice if they released all of the video to the public so we can watch it for ourselves. Because right now, all we have was one person's word, and I'm not sure that we should believe that person. This person might have just done that saying, just getting some brownie points or something. I don't know. Delane says, funny because I had a dream that you changed the think tank to Saturdays at 2, and I mentioned Cashley all concerned. She had no idea what I was talking about. Well, Delane, you should know that the next Unfound on the Ground is going to be on a Saturday afternoon, but the think tanks are always going to be 7 p.m. Eastern time on Sundays. So that's kind of funny. Where can we see the special on Brian? Well, it already played on the Headline News Network. I DVR'd it, Boston. Where can it be found online or somewhere? I don't know. Little Bit says, if he's dead, I feel mommy or dad. Well, his mother was dead, Little Bit. So, but there are people who are who were suspicious of Brian's father, but he is now dead. Seems fishy. Very, very odd. It is odd. Jean from Bonjour from Paris. Bonjour. Good to see you, Jean. Hope you're doing well there in the City of Lights. I think, Jean, you should know, at trivia last week, there was a question about Paris. And I think most people do not realize how old the city of Paris is. It's older than London, older than Madrid. Paris is a very, very established a long time ago. Never been there, probably never going to go there, but it's interesting to me to find out how old the city of Paris is. Yeah, there it is. Stitching, bitching, and true crime. There you go, a little bit. Yes. Yeah. Cherie says, I think it's pretty simple with Gabby and Brian. Brian killed her out of rage, then killed himself. All the conspiracies feeding into the drama. It's not complicated. That's true. Charlotte, I agree. I think someone killed him or he died somehow. If you're talking about Brian Schaefer, I do not believe anybody killed him. I believe he's deceased. Would love to be wrong, but I don't think anybody killed him. Yeah, they. Yes, Marlene. Even in France, we talk about Gabby Petito and her fiance. Yes, us crazy Americans, Jean. Us crazy Americans, always doing crazy stuff over here. Delane says, I agree. Way too much hype. It was only a matter of time before, spent 3 days in Paris. No iced tea, Cherie says. Okay. Okay. And Jill's talking about going. Now people are talking about France. That's nice. Charlotte says there was a lot of crime in that area from what they said on the show. Yeah, well, any city has a lot of crime. I don't know what that means, but the thing is, Charlotte, what's most important is there's only one disappearance like Brian's. and it's his. So there isn't like a rash, uh, you know, a group of young men who went missing all at one time. Certainly nothing like what I've explored regarding San Francisco, Cameron Remmer, Sean Seedy, Jackson Miller, etc. There's certainly nothing like that in Columbus. So I just think that it was particular to Brian, and uh, I just don't think he was in that great mental disposition. Then you mix in alcohol, anything's possible. So I watched it. I thought it was good. Hopefully, if you've missed it, you can find it somewhere to watch it online. I DVR'd it, so I guess I'll have it for a while. One more question, and then I want to cover a couple more things before we end it for tonight. Spleen, did you say, Ed, that you don't think you started a new life somewhere? I thought the lady who is the expert believed that about Brian. Kelly can speak for herself, but she will admit that she wavers back and forth between a lot of different scenarios, Spleen. She will tell you that. I'm telling you the conclusion that I've come to given comparing Brian's disappearance to all the others we've covered on Unfound. That's what I'm doing. I can do that because it's my program and I've looked at all of these in depth and have all the notes and all these conversations, and you've gotten to hear the interviews and everything else. That's, to me, that's the way this is supposed to work. Sure, we can look at Brian Schaefer's disappearance in a vacuum. Certainly. The smarter thing to do is to look at his disappearance and then look at other disappearances like his, whether they were solved or unsolved. And I think if you do that, you find that his disappearance is not that unique. The only thing unique about it is maybe he went into this bar and did not come out the way he went in. It's like Jesse Ross's. I particularly believe that there was no foul play in Jesse Ross's either. Now, his family does. But his and Brian's disappearance are very similar, and I think they both have the same result. That's what I think. But I don't think that he started a new life somewhere. No, I don't. Final question. This comes from Jennifer. Juniper. That's from Donovan, and that reminds me of the movie Election, one of my favorite movies. So good, the movie Election with Matthew Broderick. So good. Jennifer asks, it seems you have been particularly careful about people using last names or telling what they heard other people say lately. Have you gotten in any trouble for slander, or has there been some laws brought to your attention that would put you on eggshells regarding the subject? Jennifer, I will tell you, I just do what the guest wants. Whether we name names, whether we use fake names, whether we use last names, is always in the guest's hands. Always. All right. I do not force them to say anything. I cannot do that. I cannot say, well, you definitely have to say John Smith's name. I can't do that. They're going to say what they're going to say. We don't talk about anything they don't want to talk about in an interview. So when it comes to names, that has always been the situation. It just depends on the individual. However, what I would say, just from my own standpoint, I like naming names. What I don't like doing is bringing names, full names into the interview that surely don't have anything to do with the disappearance or something like that. Okay, we named Lonene Rogers' husband's name Clinton Rogers. It just depends. It just depends on the disappearance and what the guest wants to do. As far as what they heard other people say lately, The issue with that, once again, it's on a case-by-case basis, Jennifer. Sometimes what I always want to make sure the guests understand is, did the guest find out about this firsthand, or did this person hear it from somebody who heard it from somebody who heard it from somebody who heard it from somebody? And oftentimes, the guests are not used to thinking in those terms. What I've learned, unfortunately, and this is a human tendency anyway, we all do it. We tend to believe the things we like, and we tend to not believe the things we don't like. And so oftentimes guests are very selective of what they want to believe, and it doesn't come from the person. It just depends what that piece of information is. Whereas I think it's smarter in disappearances is that whoever the person is, you just have to choose to believe everything the person says or nothing of what the person says, because you really don't know either way whether the person's telling the truth or not. So I always want all of you to understand how this person knows what he or she knows. Certainly things that they saw firsthand are more important and more trustworthy than what they heard from somebody else, or what they heard from somebody who heard it from somebody else who heard it from somebody else. Or did they get it from the police? Or did they get it from a private investigator? All of these different sources mean something. And some of them are very trustworthy, some of them not so much. So when you ask me about what they heard other people say lately, that's the reason. And if it's just, Jennifer, if it's just popping into your understanding of the program recently, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe it just seems I'm doing that a little bit more. It's certainly not a conscious effort, but I'm always interested in knowing where a person got a certain piece of information. Always. That I'm always interested in that. But no, I've not gotten in trouble for any slander. Nobody sued me. Nothing. Ever. Over 5 years. 230 disappearances. Nothing. Or have there been laws brought to your attention that would put you on eggshells regarding the subject? No. Not at all. I'm just doing the same interviews that I'm doing since day one. Maybe it's just the kind of interviews, the kind of guests that we've had recently. Maybe that's been a little bit of a change there. I haven't noticed it. Maybe you have. But the attitude that I have going into each interview is still the same as it was over 5 years ago. Screaming says, did the Ugly Tuna have that balcony patio area at the time? I wonder. I'm guessing it did. In fact, I think it came up in the show, Screaming, that somebody had the idea that Brian jumped over a railing onto the awning below and then got down to the street. Somebody actually said, that could have been possible. So I'm guessing the patio area was open, Screaming, but I don't know if that could factor into his disappearance or not. Tom Brown. 5 years ago tonight, he went missing. We now know that his remains were found in late January, early February of 2019. So over 2 years after he went missing. And it's a disappearance that is still a landmark for this program. My assistants like to tell me that of the almost 9,000 people who are in the group, the discussion group on Facebook, probably at least 1,500 of them are there because of Tom Brown. They might even say it's more than that. Very well could be. Why is that? It's still, I have to tell you, it's hard for me to explain. Maybe it has to do with the videos that I watched. I mentioned that earlier. Maybe it had something to do with that. Maybe it was because of the interview I did on that radio station with that talk show host at the time that the episode came out. And it's really weird because this does take me back to 2018. My mother was still alive when I did that interview on that radio station with that host. I was actually in South Carolina on, was it Myrtle Beach or wherever it was? My parents had come down there and they got a place. And I actually did that interview from like the bedroom in that condo they were renting. I remember it like it was yesterday. And my mother was still alive. But it was a landmark episode for the program. I would say that I've worked on it as hard on any other episode we've ever done as I did on Tom's. It just kind of went that way, and you never, I guess, can predict those things. You never know, what's going to happen. It's just like interviewing Steve Pankey. Could I have predicted 2 years later I was going to be in court over it? No. But really, I don't think we're any closer to any answers than we were since his remains were found, despite what Phil Klein says, despite what all these other people say, despite what anybody has said. I'm still not convinced that we'll ever get the exact reason that Tom Brown died. There's nothing that I see right now, November 24th, 2021, 5 years since Tom's disappearance. Of course, it's not the exact date, but he disappeared the night before Thanksgiving. We know that the date of Thanksgiving is different every year. Of course, it's not like Christmas, which is always December 25th, but you know what I mean. I'm not convinced we'll ever know what really, really happened to him. And I think everybody should start to get very comfortable. I've been saying that for a while. Everybody should. I'm not saying that people shouldn't stop working on it objectively, but I just don't know if there's going to be any new evidence that comes up. I don't know where it's going to come from. I don't know. And as recent events have shown, there's a lot of doubt about a lot about what has gone on in the last 5 years. In fact, I would say there's more doubt now than when I did the interview with Penny in June of 2018. So there you go. Hello, Iman. Good to see you. Law enforcement involvement at any level draws views. Okay, so regarding Tom's disappearance. Okay, Shuri. So 5 years, I know it's not technically, I think, what was it, November 26th? Technically, back in 2018 or 2016. But it was the night before. I don't know how many people remember that. But he disappeared the night before Thanksgiving. That Wednesday night, the day before the night before. Still no closer to any answers. Charlotte's getting out. Well, good night. We're just about done here anyway, Charlotte. Just about 7 more minutes. So let's move on to this Friday's episode. And yes, there is going to be one because the work never stops here at Unfound. This Friday, we're having him back for the 5th time. My buddy Anthony at crimeblogger1983.blogspot.com, kind of making it a yearly thing with him. And the last time he was here was in November of 2020 when he talked about the disappearance of Gayla Shaper from Idaho. I think also back in like 1980 or 81, going back there. Well, this week, I interviewed him last Thursday night, and we're going to be talking about the disappearance of Beatrice Villela, nicknamed BB, from San Antonio, Texas. She disappeared on September 28th, 1980. And this is kind of the man said disappearance where she was 19, but she was being taken care of. In fact, the name of this episode is called A Kept Woman. She was 19, but she was a beautician working at the salon, and the owner of the salon took an overt interest in her, buying her a lot of things. And in fact, she was living in his condo, but he was a married man. They had a falling out not long before she went missing, but they got back together. And then allegedly on September 28th of 1980, the two of them had gone to a beauty supply store first. Then they took those supplies to the salon, and allegedly she left on her own and she was never seen again. Her car was eventually discovered a month and a half later in an apartment complex not close to where she lived or where she worked, but it's still in the city limits of San Antonio, and it yielded no clues. Anthony wrote about Beatrice's disappearance back in 2019. He has a vast catalog of disappearances that we could have talked about, but he picked this one out for us to discuss. In addition, though, we are going to be talking to Anthony. Anthony was on TV this year due to some work he did regarding the murder of a woman, Dorothy Scott, from California. And this was a murder, and it's still unsolved. This was a murder that was covered on Paula Zahn's show a couple months ago. And Anthony, they flew him from where he lives to California. He was on TV. He's on this show. And so we talk about that. We talk a little bit about Dorothy's disappearance, and then her remains were found. She was certainly murdered. And we talk about Anthony's sudden fame of seeing his work recognized to the point that they were going to bring him out there to talk to him in person. So we talk about Beatrice's disappearance, and then we talk about Dorothy Scott's murder and Anthony's work on it and how he ended up getting attention for his work. But I'll remind you, both of these cases are still unsolved. So that will be this Friday. The name of the episode is A Kept Woman. Sub Rosa says, hi, Ed. Any thoughts on why loved ones are more open to the foul play rather than suicide in the cases of the missing? Yeah, because they always want somebody to blame. It's not particular to them. That's particular to human nature. We're always looking for somebody to blame for something, even though maybe it may be nobody's fault. So I think it's just part of human nature. I think emotionally also it's easier for them to understand if they believe that it's foul play, that it was just out of nowhere somebody came along and caused their loved one's disappearance. Whereas when you start talking about suicide, then they start thinking, well, did I miss something? Did the person say something? Should I have not seen something? And then all the guilt starts to come in. And trust me, these people have enough guilt as it is. So I think it's kind of a defense mechanism, Sub Rosa. I think that would be my best answer for you. Linda's getting out. You have a happy Thanksgiving. Gobble, gobble, gobble. Be safe on Black Friday. Yeah, you too. I'm going to be sleeping in. Have a great night, you two. Cut the legs off so I can make broth to add the dressing. So November 26th, I was right about Tom Brown's, the date of his disappearance. Thank you, Cherie. Anthony is awesome screaming. Everybody's getting out of here. Happy Thanksgiving to all. By the way, I'm moving to Florida early 2022. Thanks for the show. Jean, you're going to love Florida. I've never been to France. I'm probably never going to be there. But I think you're going to love Florida. I don't know where you're going to be staying or anything or moving to, but it's a beautiful state. It gets hot. It gets humid. It rains a lot, the occasional hurricane, but there's always stuff to do. And I hope everybody, all of us Americans, treat you very, very well. And so that's all we have for tonight. Man, what a show. What a great show. I give this show a thumbs up. So I talked about disc golf. Let's not forget my shirt that Allison Diker sent me, last Friday's guest. The front and the back. And what else did we do? Talked about the anniversary of my mother's death that's coming up. Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Going to the dentist. Boom, boom. The Lonene Rogers poll. Me on John Lordan's show, him on the special episode of Unfound, Heidi Plank, Unfound Now. Shri and I talking this weekend, Brian Landry, the Brian Schaefer special, 5-year anniversary of Tom Brown's disappearance, some spectacular questions. And then finally, this Friday's episode where Anthony is the guest, the disappearance of Beatrice Villela. That's all I got. I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Eat as much as you want. Just do it. Don't worry about feeling guilty. Just eat. It's okay. It's okay. You got time to work it off to get ready then for Christmas, where you can then eat a lot again. So thank you all. Thank you for taking time out of your busy lives to watch this live show that's been going on for over 4 years now. And some of you in the think tank will see me on Sunday evening. Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Good night.